if you approach the business of sport with the kind of passion of a fan and an understanding of the culture behind it and kind of what potential really can be if you put all of your resources into it, then it's limitless and it can do so much good for so many people. So as much as I've worked in sports, I know I've worked a lot in the effort of making other people a lot of money. My shift now, especially after the break I took, in the last few years, is really about how do we use this incredible platform to to really accelerate the kind of progress we all need to thrive, not just constantly survive.
If you've ever looked at your life and thought, this can't be it, you need today's guest. I first met Ania Sponaski back in 2010 when we worked together at the Vancouver Olympic Games. Back then, she was the outgoing colleague who knew how to lift a room and squeeze joy out of even the most chaotic days. And that's what's so powerful about how the same spark shows up now after a 2-year pause that completely reset her life. Ania listened to her body, she re-examined everything, and rebuilt a path that is actually fit with who she is. She's honest, sharp, self-aware, and completely relatable in a way in which she talks about her change, her identity, and finding the real rhythm in her life. This conversation has range and it has heart. Let's get into it. Hello, Ania. This is the lightning round. I just want to ask you a bunch of questions and just to have you quickly shout out whatever answers come to mind. Thoughtful, light, meaningful, but quick, and then we'll jump into the entire episode itself. So I'd love to get a sense from you as to what's one small daily ritual that keeps you grounded.
Okay. It's kind of new for me, but it has proven to be probably one of the best ones that I've introduced into my life. I am now a woman in my 40s. I have to start paying attention to a lot of things. And I was recently diagnosed finally with ADHD. So I'm trying to kind of develop the whole tool set that I need to be as productive and as successful as I want to be. So the biggest thing I've introduced for myself is protein in the morning, 2 eggs every day. And the
Okay, that's
consistency
something
of
you
it
did
is
before.
awesome. Sorry?
That's something you did before in the past,
No,
not
no,
diligently.
I haven't been a
Okay.
big breakfast person most of my life, to be honest. So you kind of don't get the hit that you need early on. But for me, the 2 eggs that I think I started probably springtime this year, and have stuck to it now for, I guess, 6 months, has really made me feel a whole lot better and has helped me adapt even better, like tools that I need to be as progressive or as productive as I can be.
Nice. Okay, getting your protein first thing in the morning. I love that. What's one thing that you finally given yourself permission to stop doing?
Ooh, wonderful question. I think pretending that I have it all figured out. Okay, like I think people all my life have seen me as someone who's always capable, has the ability to get things done, especially when they need to get it done. But it's exhausting, and we know now where that leads to, always being on and always performing. So I think finally accepting the fact that you're not going to be considered a failure because you just haven't lived this experience yet and you don't know how to address it yet.
I love that. It's funny. I feel like maybe just over time, I've just realized that hearing you say that, most of us, if not all of us, have not really figured it out. This whole fake it till you make it. There's a sense that, I don't know, the more you meet people, the more you engage with people, you just realize that everyone's kind of, not to say that they're making it up as they go along. In some cases they are, but no one's really figured it all out. You can do a great job of kind of keeping up with appearances, particularly on social media these days. But yeah, I love that you're saying
Yeah, and
that.
there's no manual, right? Like, there's no manual to being a human, and we are all completely different. So we shouldn't feel like anyone has it figured out because everyone is an individual, and you should be living to your own um, intuition and your own capabilities and your own dreams. Like, it's as simple as that.
Love that. Love that. Love that. You're an avid traveler, like myself, like with family as well. What's the most meaningful place that you've ever traveled to, and why?
Oh, okay. This could be a few different answers, but I do think the most meaningful place for me is returning home to my birth country, which randomly is Italy for me. You know, like I have a very Polish last name. My family is very Polish. I've grown up in Canada since I was 2 months old, but I had the unique privilege of being born in Italy and starting my life there. And you know, I have such a beautiful connection to the people there, more so than the country, because of how easy they made a really difficult situation for my family and me coming into this world. So every time I go back to Italy, there's almost like a rebirth inside me to some extent. I got to go back most recently last year, and I went with girlfriends this time, so it was a very different kind of trip. And honestly, that trip was where I decided what I'm going to be doing now going forward. So I think it you can't really beat that.
Wow. Where in Italy? Where were you born? Where did you go back to just recently?
So I was born just south of Rome. It's a town called
Okay.
Latina. Um, so much history to it, which I
Latino. I
won't
love
like.
that.
That needs its own podcast. But I happened to be in Rome the day where I realized, you know what, I'm gonna do my own business and I'm gonna call it and I'm gonna start with this. And yeah, I was in Rome.
Wow. Okay, last quick question. What's one word that describes the season of life that you're currently in now?
I mean, it probably has to be growth. As like cliche as it feels like on like a podcast about growth, I don't know. Every single day just feels like a new level is reached. And once you start opening yourself up to actually learning from everything that's happening in your life, everything that's going on around you, everything that you're just experiencing, it's a constant evolution. And if you kind of like jump into the driver's seat and like let the steering wheel navigate a little bit, then the doors just start to open for you. And I think that's really what I want to be embracing most right now is I don't want to force things. I want to set things up, but I don't want to force them. And by following that kind of, I don't know, like flow, it's proving to be really successful so far. So I kind of have to keep going with it.
I love that. Don't fight it, flow with it. That's good. Beautiful. I love that. So, in order to give our listeners a bit of perspective as to who you are, before we get into the titles and the accomplishments of all the amazing things that you've done, who is Anya when no one's watching? What's the version of you that doesn't show up on social media, so that we can get a sense of like looking underneath the hood to get a sense of who you are as an
Yeah.
individual.
Yeah. Again, super great question because I think the easiest way for me to say it is like I'm a homebody. I know a lot of people are. I enjoy my own company and I enjoy peace. So being at home, you know, I've designed this home in a way where I mean you can even see behind me it's
I know, I
me
love
in
it.
every sense of the word. Like I've got my Hogwarts Lego built, you know. I just like to sit at home and do puzzles and do Lego and create and be kind of in the weeds of something. Um, and I think that probably comes a lot from like my upbringing. I am a first generation immigrant. It is very much built into my personality that you have to always be working for what you want, even if in the quiet moments the work is more internalized, and even just having your hands busy or kind of being like consumed by something allows you to think a little bit differently. I'm also, I've always felt like a little bit of an outsider, which probably for you is strange to hear because I was chair of the social committee when we were together at the Olympics. But now I also understand that a lot of that has to do with, my late life diagnosis of ADHD with, autism in that kind of mix as well. So I haven't always known myself and haven't always known how to bring myself into situations with other people. And now that I have kind of this self-awareness, it's definitely becoming easier to, I think I said it earlier, just accept things as they are and not force anything. So that's probably, yeah, the person who people don't see is someone who just really likes to be kind of in that self-reflection mode, but keeping busy at the same time and trying to understand how she fits into the world.
Yeah, it sounds like you've reflected a lot in terms of your own personal direction and own personal life in the last 5, 10 years, maybe more so, just in terms of being much more introspective and thoughtful about the approach and what you want out of life as well. For I guess for people who don't orbit your world, how would you describe the essence of what you do and why it matters to you on such a deeply personal level as well?
I am not someone who is very coordinated, so I'm not an athlete, but
Okay.
I work in sports. There's
I
other
love
I
that.
want people
Okay.
to know that there are other ways for you to work in sports. You don't have to be athletic. You don't have to be, like homecoming queen or anything like that. You just need to have a passion for what sport does. And to me, sport brings people together. It's shared experience, it's community, it's building trust. It's kind of progress as a collective effort. And I've had an incredible privilege to be working in sports now for over 20 years. It started when I worked at the Olympics here in Vancouver. You know, I grew up watching the Olympics. I grew up watching hockey. It really was and still is a huge part of my identity, despite the fact that I'm not an athlete. And I think it is a bastion of society. It is something that people rally around. It's a huge economy driver. And if you approach the business of sport with the kind of passion of a fan and an understanding of the culture behind it and kind of what potential really can be if you put all of your resources into it, then it's limitless and it can do so much good for so many people. So as much as I've worked in sports, I know I've worked a lot in the effort of making other people a lot of money. My shift now, especially after the break I took, in the last few years, is really about how do we use this incredible platform to really accelerate the kind of progress we all need to thrive, not just constantly survive. So
So are you marketing? Like talk a bit of some of the nuances around some of the projects or initiatives, or maybe one or two, or like a bit more detail in terms of what you're actually now focusing on the because it's sports marketing on that side, is it? Or and like are you promoting the brands to different audiences? What's your day to day now look like, or what are you now focused on as you're running your own shop? Yeah.
I mean, the funny thing I always tie it back to is I'm Ania Sponaski, who's worked in sports sponsorships for her career. There's this faux kind of thing that I really am starting to embrace and feel like I have a lot to say because I've worked in so many different areas. So it started in sponsorship. It started with understanding how money is really utilized in the business. And then my work spread. I moved to London for 4 years. I've traveled the world with sports. Especially the last decade, I was based in Vancouver, but all of my business was really US based or global major events. And a lot of it became very strategic. And so I see myself today as more of a creative strategist who understands the business of sports and is capable of packaging up big opportunities, big ideas into practical pathways to unlocking new business, new gains, new benefits, new ideas, whatever it is. I'm very much focused on the pulse of what comes next versus what's been happening for the last 40 years.
Very cool. Very interesting. So you and I met Vancouver 2010 Olympics, which hard to believe is 15 years ago. You're still involved in this kind of world around sports marketing, and the fact that you've been able to blossom it into your own endeavor, your own entrepreneurship endeavor as well, your own company is amazing. You've gone through various changes. So you worked at the large sports marketing agency you were just referring to, and had clients around the world. Like every turning point, and now you've decided to pursue your own endeavor. Like every turning point, as you reflect on your own career, has this spark. What was that first moment? Was it quiet? Was it chaotic? Was it subtle? When you sensed that life was asking you for a bit of a change?
Mm, yeah, I mean, I've reflected a lot on this particular point because I think it was a buildup. And I this is like 2021 now, late 2021. I think a lot of people started to open up a little bit to what do they actually want their life to be like right around COVID. And I was literally on the road 3 weeks out of every month. So all of a sudden I was at home and I was in a moment where I could actually start thinking, not just doing all the time. And it took a while, but I started to realize that my values and my needs were not being recognized at all. And, it was a joke that I was online 24/7. And I would wake up every morning, first thing in the morning with just this feeling of dread. Like I literally would say to myself, I hate my life. And that is not.
What was it? Was it the workload, or was it the fact that you had what changed? Or you said you had time to think, but what was it that you didn't like? What was yeah.
Honestly, it wasn't so much the workload because again, understanding my ADHD now, I actually need that churn. I'm quite capable of that churn, but it was what surrounded it. So, you need support in order to be successful in what you're doing. And I think when I finally understood that my needs and my values, most importantly, weren't being met in the environment that I was in, I had to start pushing back. And that pushback made it even more difficult to kind of open the door to positive conversation with people who weren't ready for that. So I started to kind of look outside the little box that I'd been stuffed into and started to hear more of the support for myself. Which made it clear to me that this isn't a me problem. And it's time for me to take matters into my own hands because trying to force change through other people making those decisions on my behalf was not going to work.
Interesting. I mean, as I'm hearing you say this, I mean, there's so many people who are listening to this going through the same sort of experience, same sort of challenge, right? And it's hard to walk away from things when you've been operating in autopilot for such a long period of time. So for people who are listening and hearing this, like, how did you decide to not sort of turn your back on what it is that you felt that you needed to do to get the support you needed to be able to kind of venture away from what you had known as what was normal in the work that you were doing and the people you were working with, and having to sort of pivot and transition? How did you manage that?
My body forced it. It was, and so,
Okay.
it wasn't necessarily a moment of stillness. It wasn't a moment of clarity. It was something is happening to me, and I'm not 100% clear on what it is. And at first, it really just at first, it really just felt like it was a lot of anxiety. And I'm obviously someone who's had a lot of anxiety in their life, and it's manifested into autoimmune disorders Like I've had psoriasis since I was 20 years old. And one of the big things that started to happen towards the end of, my last kind of solid gig was my endometriosis started to really flare up. So I took a break first because I had vacation days. It was as simple as that. The HR team and other senior leaders just said, look, you've got the time, so take it, and then we'll reassess in a few weeks. When it came time to even think about going back to work, it's like every single alarm in my body went off at the same time. And I felt totally paralyzed. So I made the decision then, okay, you still have time that you can take for yourself. 11 years with one company, I had short-term disability that was available to me. So to people listening, like take the stuff that is available to you because you need it and it's there for a reason. So I took all that time and the first thing that happened was my body just shut down and I was in this kind of bubble of 2 months of just being so sick all the time because of this major endometriosis flare up. And that was the point where I made the very deliberate decision that I can no longer let myself be dragged back into the kind of situations that led to.
Huh. Huh. If it wasn't for your body reacting the way that it did, do you think would we still be having this conversation? Would you still be working with your former employer, still in that environment?
I want to say no.
Yeah.
I want to
Oh,
say
okay.
no because I think I have changed so much. Not even physically, right? It's everything emotional and mental. But would I have taken that amount of time off in the first place? Probably not. Um, and, you know, I don't know if I would have necessarily taken as much time off afterwards as I did. I didn't work for 2 whole years at the kind of when you package it all together. And the break from like the physical health crisis was definitely an eye opener, but I still don't think it was the moment that like changed life for good.
Oh, what was that?
Uh, it was probably, yeah, losing my job and having to like all of a sudden everything was just black, you know? You wake up every morning and even if you're dreading what you're about to have to go through, you still know what you're about to have to go through. So there's um comfort in the known. And for me, it became all of an unknown. And um to wake up one day and just have no idea what the next day is going to look like was um yeah, it shakes you out of your reality completely. Now you know you have to reset. Now you know you have to become someone who is going to live the life that they want and they deserve.
Hmm. Wow. I'm always fascinated by this space between the decision and the leap or the transition. That kind of middle, foggy middle, whatever you want to call it, where nothing is not certain yet. And what did that in between feel like for you? You talked about some of the physical pieces and the emotional pieces, but broadly, like, what did that actually feel like? That transition, that time when you're kind of figuring out what you're going to do next.
Yeah. I mean, it felt quite lonely, the probably like most honest way to put it because nobody else is openly going through it. Nobody else is talking about it. And that is a huge reason why I chose to talk about it a lot because I knew how much I felt like I didn't have anyone to lean on when I really did have those moments of, oh my God, what am I gonna do? Like I need something. I need some guidance. I need a spark. You've said it yourself. I need something to help me clear the vision or clear the path even. So I think what what quickly got me out of that was actually therapy, which I think is really important for people to feel comfortable talking about. Because I know there's still a lot of stigma around it. It doesn't mean you have problems that are unsolvable. It means that you recognize you need support. And when I started to see a counselor and I really started to kind of break down all of my trauma and all of the barriers to being the person that I wanted to be, I never felt alone in that process then.
Okay.
And
Wow.
it set me up, like the way that it taught me to think through things rather than kind of take things at face value, break it down even more so. And then the more you work through that, obviously, the more self compassion you develop. Obviously, self awareness is kind of, for me, the number one thing that has really come out of this whole thing. And with those tools, the self love becomes much more powerful. And then you can never be alone because you've got your number one best friend right there beside you. It's literally you. It's inside you. It's not beside you.
Right. So that's I love that because so many things that you mentioned there, and just in terms of the transition that you went through, and the fact that you sought help, right? And I think there is such a negative connotation with therapy. It's one of those last few taboos, right? That I feel like people, then you realize the more you talk to people, the more you realize that there's a supports that most people rely on and lean on that they don't actually publicly acknowledge, right? And so having an individual who can help you talk through some of the challenges you're facing, being a sober second opinion on some of the challenges and some of the emotional baggage and weight that you have in your life is very therapeutic in many ways. And so going through therapy, going through having those conversations, you then mentioned that you had spent some time abroad. So one of the questions we answered earlier was that you had this kind of, I don't want to say if it's an epiphany, maybe it'd be great to hear your insights on this, and just in your time in Italy and how that translated to you then being intentional about now having your own shop. How did that evolve from there to traveling in Italy and then coming up with this idea?
Yeah. Well, okay. So, like I said, I took 2 whole years off work. I I recognize not everyone has that privilege. It doesn't come easily. I obviously have things like debt that I'm trying to climb out of and stuff like that right now. But I took it very seriously. But at the same time, I didn't plan anything. So I was literally just living life again. I'd gotten into that autopilot mode of the number one priority in my life is my job and the work that I have to do for other people. And once that was removed from my life, I was able to um, rediscover the things that made me happiest. So I did a lot of dog sitting. I live in Vancouver. I live basically in a forest. It's beautiful here. And I had a lot of free time on my hands. So I was constantly walking dogs and just being inspired by nature and like what the beauty of the world actually is. I spent a lot of time kind of engaging with community, whether it was my friends, my family, people here in the city, people that I hadn't worked with in 10, 15 years, just to kind of start to come back to that individual that I used to be before I was dragged away from it. And I really just kind of let myself go with the flow, like I said before. And so the inspiration just took hold itself. And this idea came to me of, okay, what could you have as like your anchor going forward? You don't have your job, you don't have like the family you dreamt of, you don't have the stuff that you assumed would be yours by now. So it became kind of, well, what do I want to project into the world then? And for me, it came down to this idea of solutionary. I've always been one to approach problems really kind of head on and logical and try to get to the bottom of what caused it in the first place so you can actually find the right solutions in the end.
Nice. Solutions focus. Okay. Got it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
solutionary for me is, you are constantly aware of what is good for your soul. And
Oh, I see what you're
that
saying.
is
Okay.
what you bring outwards. And so when you're,
Also, the term is soulutionary, like SOUL.
yeah,
Okay, I love that.
yeah.
Huh.
I've even brought it into like my business name now is Original Sport Solutions. Um, the handle that I use on Instagram is the OG Solutionary. So it became kind of the thing that I just wanted to like grasp onto and make sure I never let go of it. And so going to Italy was another chance to kind of reconnect to that soul purpose. And like I said earlier, the people there that gave such opportunity to me and my family. I don't know. It's like it always wakes something up in me. So I don't think it's a mistake that I was in Italy when I decided to move forward with something called original sport solutions. And I'm now going to try and have a bit of a personality, a bit of a voice, and refer to myself as the OG solutionary. So, inspiration came, and I just ran with it.
I love it. And so let's go take a quick step back because when you said something, I kind of peeked to another area I wanted to kind of probe into. 2 years off, and you talked about the financial piece, which of course is a big thing. Not everyone can do that, and you acknowledge that. But how was it in this world that we live in now? As I'm thinking, what other people are probably asking, like, how did you handle all the other people wondering, like, okay, what are you doing with your life? The questions that was been coming your way. Have you figured it out? Are you feeling better? What's next? I don't know, family, friends, yourself, putting that pressure on yourself. It sounds like you were giving yourself space, but often the outside world puts pressure on you to figure out what's next. And how did you deal with that in terms of the pressure the outside world was most likely probably putting on you, or questions that they were posing either explicitly or implicitly about what you were doing during that 2 year kind of break?
Yeah, it's such a big question, and I don't know if I'll have, like, an answer that I'm thrilled with, but it feels authentic, so I'm just gonna go with it. Um, but I think because I never made it about myself, like, 2 years off, I didn't just sit at home doing puzzles every day. I contributed a lot. So, my friends with their families, as soon as one of the kids was home sick from school, Auntie Anya's over and kind of taking care of things. Professional days, Auntie Anya's got a group of kids and we're having the time of our lives. I started to do things like explore passions that I didn't think were going to be necessarily path forward, but at least opened the door to my confidence probably improving, because that's one thing that I did worry about is the more time you take off, the more people are actually going to forget about you. But I was doing like cookie decorating and baking and stuff like that, and just feeling like I was part of community. And I really, really in the last in that time recognized how important it is to not only live for myself, but you know, my mom, my grandma, my uncle, they devoted their lives to us. And now they're in their twilight years. My grandma, thankfully, she's still around. She's going to be 89 in February, and she works her every day still. But you don't want her to. You don't want them to constantly be fighting every single day. So I shifted to be much more of a caregiver in that sense, and I've found it to be a lot more fulfilling, and I think my family appreciated having me around so much more than they had grown accustomed to. Since I moved to London for 4 years and then came back, I was still traveling and never really present. So the fact that I became present in that time, I think, was what didn't create any friction with others to look at me as someone who was wasting their time.
Mm, very interesting. Is there been a book or an idea or a conversation or some sort of unexpected moment that has shifted your worldview in some way, something that's made you see your life or work differently? I mean, obviously during that time, you did a number of things during that sort of that pause, that 2 year pause that you took. Was there something that allowed you to kind of see things differently along the way during that 2 year pause?
I might get some backlash for this, but
Yeah. Yeah. All the more reason to share. Yes. Because I'm sure many other people are thinking the same thing.
I actually think when you want the algorithm on social media to feed you stuff that helps you, it will. So I I was not like on social media a lot before, and I will absolutely admit that I'm on it far too much now. But I'm finding that because I'm very aware of the stuff that is guiding me or the stuff that is opening up something different in me, um, I'm just getting fed more and more of that. And I don't think it's propaganda in,
Mhm. Okay.
in the way that
Okay.
it's propaganda when it's like a bot feeding you. These are real people who have overcome difficulties and are now very happy to share about what worked for them. And when you find this kind of community of people that are willing to give of themselves in that way, I think it starts to change how you want to approach the way you interact with people as well. So it's such a, I know people can see the good and the bad of it, and I can too, absolutely. But I do think the more I started to understand who was on social media, the more it impacted how I was going to start moving through the world.
That's interesting because I mean, most people's knee jerk reaction is to equate social media with negativity, but it sounds like you were able to curate an audience, or at least a following, or at least to follow individuals that were going to help support you as part of your journey. Then
100%. Very well said. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
okay, very interesting. And was that how, like, what did you do to find those people or to find your community? What was how did you, where do you even start?
It might have started with therapy and just being more conscious of like very specific terminology that was being served up in the algorithm, and then paying attention to that, and then kind of letting that guide me to the next thing that unlocked. Um, I've learned a lot about my own anxiety through it. I've obviously learned a lot about how to not just start understanding the superpowers of ADHD, because I know that there are so many kind of immediate like feelings of
I like
shut
that.
down when you hear that someone has neurodivergence, or is neurodivergent, I should say. And even like the way that I function in my relationships, I know what I need from people better these days, and I can see what they are struggling with on their own. And so I think there are those types of handles, there are those types of creators that really want to help people, and you just have to become aware of them. That's it.
I love. Okay, wow. I love that because that's something I think most of us sort of think about or even contemplate. It's again, it's more focused on why it's detrimental to your well-being as opposed to helpful. But it sounds like you were able to find a coalition or a community of the willing to help support you as you were going through your pause and just to help improve your overall well-being. When you've already talked, you've been in sports marketing, global partnerships, sponsorships for the last 20, 30 years, right? And um, what's shifting now in the field that you think more people need to notice that you haven't really seen evolve in years or time gone by?
So I think the business of sport is becoming a lot more democratized, meaning there's more opportunity for more people to get involved. Ownership groups. So ownership groups for the longest time have been like white dudes like that, rich white dudes, family money. That's really been the kind of culture that's established this stronghold over sports, and why it's been so male dominated for so long as well. But with new ownership, which in some, like some of the VCs, we know that like they're in it for whatever they're in it for. You get that. But there are also a lot of players, a lot of athletes that are starting to think about their careers post athletics, post competition, and they are thinking about legacy. So how do they bring more accessibility to sport? How do they bring more of the experiences that have shaped them in positive ways into the world of sport? The facts that women go ahead.
Whereas the past Enya, that wasn't the case.
It
That wasn't
wasn't.
the case. You
It
thought it
wasn't common.
was very limited. It was very kind of looking at your own
Yeah.
career, and that was it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've worked with a lot of athletes, and a lot of athletes have really struggled in those years where they know that this is like their final shot. This is probably going to be their last major tournament, their last major competition. What's going to come next? Because people are already disinterested in them. Nobody is trying to sponsor them anymore. Nobody is trying to bring them onto their platforms and kind of build some bridges to their long-standing fans, right? Just because you're no longer competing doesn't mean you don't have fans anymore. And so that whole dynamic is shifting a lot right now. And I think women's sport has a huge role to play in it, obviously. And I've been spending so much time kind of building um, not just awareness of what is driving it or what is going to drive it, but really thinking about how we let people experience it as something different than male sports. Um, and so when we think of kind of this idea of democratization in sport, it means that there's going to be emerging opportunities, emerging initiatives, the connectivity that exists with technology and sustainability and kind of going back to access and just more voices being part of it. That's what sport has always needed, and I'm happy to see it's happening. But we also are in this kind of risky period of time where it could quickly be totally defined by where people are going to get the most influence or where they're going to make the most money. And my goal is to steer it. You can make money, but make sure that everybody benefits from it, not just you and you alone.
That's interesting that you've seen that change and that shift. I mean, the proliferation, maybe that's not the right word, but the significant increase in female sports, particularly at the professional level, has changed dramatically. Not only over the last couple of years, like I'd say over the last decade, 5 years, if not. Especially as a dad of two young girls, and young girls who are avid basketball players, who have now, are just so enamored with the Toronto Tempo coming here to the city, and even the growth of professional women's hockey. And even just just the conversations are happening a lot more. Even it was a couple of years ago. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago. A couple of years ago, with Christine St. Clair talking about equity in sports in terms of compensation and pay. Right. So these are all conversations, you're right, that have not typically happened in the past, or if they were, that they were kind of kept behind closed doors. Right. And so it's a lot of significant progress from the days of, I guess, um, um, you know, Billie Jean King, and playing tennis and all that, to where we are now. Are we there yet? No, still a long ways to go, but it's become much more socialized or democratized, as you said, right? And that really does that really bodes well. How would you say, this kind of reinvention that you've gone through, how has it changed the way you've shown up, right? In your work, your relationships, and even the way you kind of move through the world now? What's something that how have you changed as an individual in the way you are now as Ania Sponaski 2.0?
I have always been really, really hard on myself. Like I'm sure most people are. But I'm the beat yourself up kind of person for the smallest mistake. And so I think the biggest change I have witnessed that has done the most for me is much more self compassion, just much more willingness to accept that I am not just fault after fault after fault after fault. That there are so many reasons I am exactly who I am. That there are kind of things that I'm capable of that I know other people aren't, that I choose to look at in a very positive way now. Whereas before, I would finish a phone call sometimes and be like, why am I so different? Why is my brain not like fixated in this conversation the same way that everyone else is? What am I missing? And I don't think that kind of self-talk does anyone any good. And I think we're seeing it now, on such a mass scale of what doubting yourself um, and kind of being dismissive of your own positive attributes does to the collective. Because if someone who really believes in the good in people and wants to support others as much as I do, to constantly be belittling my efforts or to consistently kind of be telling myself you're not good enough, what chance does anyone stand who kind of hasn't even made it as far as I have at this point? So I think that's probably made me function very differently. I walk through the world as a different person because of that.
Wow, I love that. It's funny. I delivered a talk last week to there's kind of a group of high potential employees within the federal government in Ottawa. And one of the things I talked about was confidence and this idea of looking at your evidence of excellence. And so I talk about is your lived experience. Like we often forget, we're short-term memories, most of us as human beings, and this idea that we forget about the things that we've accomplished. I had to deliver. I was participating in a speaking competition this weekend, right? And having my doubts and thinking through, I'm like, oh boy, this is a bigger audience, et cetera, et cetera. But I had to actually go back and look at the previous videos of me speaking on stages to remind myself of the things that I had been able to accomplish and reminding myself of that, right? So and then also the fact that the self-talk, right? And even talking to myself in the third person to say, Charles, you've done this before. You've been on bigger stages than this, right? You've done this. And just to remind myself, because I find that when I talk to myself, as crazy as it may sound and as woo as it may sound, you talk to yourself in your third person, it's almost as if I'm talking to someone else. And if I'm speaking to you and you're having these doubts, why can't I also talk to myself in that same soothing, comforting manner, right? And so those are all the things, or how to build healthy arrogance, right? Not necessarily for you to walk around like you own the place, but to know that you have an important perspective that needs to be shared and disseminated around those around the table, right? Just to make sure that your voice is being heard. And so I love all the things that you're saying and the fact that you're realizing that you're talking to yourself and you're much more compassionate about yourself these days. So for someone listening, what would that entail? What would you suggest or recommend someone do to try and improve how you treat yourself?
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm the type of person who does affirmations, but I do think that I have like truths that I wholeheartedly believe. So, number one truth, I know I'm kind. If you can say that about yourself, you should feel very, very, very good about yourself. So, I think just being able to articulate what it is that you are. I know I am kind. I know I am smart, right? Like there's proof of it in the 43 years I've spent
I
on this
love that.
planet. So
Exactly.
stop telling yourself that you're not. There is going to always be proof that you have done smart things, that you've acted in a smart way. You are not the worst case scenario of, when you haven't fulfilled that potential or that promise or whatever it is. And I know I'm creative. That was something that, especially working in sports or especially working in like more of a like business oriented role, you really get shut down a lot when you're trying to bring forward different kinds of ideas. People don't necessarily see you as a creative, but I had time to go back and re-experience the person that I was for my entire childhood and those kind of more youthful years. Creativity was a major part of my life, and I just let it fall away. Um, and so to be able to come back like in my toughest moments and just remind myself, I am kind, I am smart, I am creative. You don't have to question everything because you know that those three ingredients are never going to change.
Oh, beautiful, Anya. Those three truths. And that's what you keep on coming back to time and time again and giving people the space to actually reflect on their own life and figure out what are their three core truths or whatever the number may be. And I love that. That is something that's been consistent and that's in your DNA. That's who you are. Beautiful. What's as we kind of wrap up here, what's lighting you up these days? Where is your curiosity taking you or your courage pulling you next?
I think right now I am most inspired by the people that are doing the hard work of standing up for what's right and taking the hits while they're in the crossfires. I would love to have the time because financially I would never have to worry about it to actually be a devoted human rights activist. We need that now. We need people that are focused on the future, focused on uh, collective outcomes, and are really at the forefront of the battles that have to be fought in order for all of us to live that way. I live in Vancouver. There's no possible way for me to be able to afford living in this city, and I have to live in this city while my family is alive. Like I've tried to leave before. I did for 4 years. I was going to leave around the Paris Olympics. It's just not practical for the person that I am. So I am inspired by individuals that are doing the hard work, that are using their voices, especially for, in the thinking about those who can't. Not everyone has the same privilege or the same platform. And because I am as inspired by them as I continue to be, kind of every day it just grows and grows and grows. It means that no matter what I do, even if it is more corporate or more business, I know I can still find ways to make the kind of contributions that are more positive for the many than just for, the wealthy. So the more I am watching them, the more it is pushing me to do what I have to do to at least match that energy through the platforms that I have.
Well said. Wow.
We're all in this together, right? Like that's all that it comes down to. We live on this planet together at this moment in time together, so we got to be in this together.
Oh, so incredibly well said. Anya, it's been 15 years in the making, this conversation. We could go on and on and on and on. I have thoroughly
Me
enjoyed
too.
speaking to you. It's like we just picked off from where we last left off, so many years ago. It has been such a joy to have you on the show. Thank you so much for
All my
joining
best
us
to
today. And
Janice
yeah,
and the
sharing
girls
your insights and
too.
wisdom.
I hope to see you
We'll
guys sooner
do.
rather
We'll
than
do.
later, okay?
Yeah, we would love that. We would love
This
that.
was wonderful.
Thank you again. Thanks for
Congratulations on
being on the
everything
show.
you have found success in. Keep doing what you're doing. I think you are spreading amazing messaging and kind of energy. So keep at it. I'm super proud
Thank
of you.
you. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. That's it for today.